Welcome back to the Fish Vet Files Season 2. So we're going to be sharing 11 cases and some of our wonderful clients and patients that we've gotten to work with over the 11 years that we've been in practice. Yes, today is our 11th anniversary. I'd throw some confetti if I didn't have little cats that would probably eat that. So for our first episode of Season 2, we're going to be sharing a lovely pond that has some very special needs koi. So we've been taking care of this pond for several years now. They are some of our older clients / patients, even though they're not that old. But essentially we were first called in back in 2016 for kind of a dreadful health issue. So these fish had been living up north in Redding, and we're moving down to Monterey to go into a brand new pond. They were very beloved new fish for the owner, and they had them set up in this lovely temporary swimming pool, which is the nicest temporary pond we've ever seen. Had its own filtration, had its own pumps, and I think it was about 5 or 6 koi in there. And within the first week, one of the fish swam into the pump intake and was completely macerated. And obviously, this is very stressful for the fish that remain in the pond. So they started breaking with ulcers all over their bodies. Now, if you keep expensive Japanese koi, in the process of, getting them to size, having them move through the vendors, they unfortunately have some not great antibiotic practices. So it tends to cause these, super expensive fish to be bacterial resistant to at least our main arsenal of antibiotics. So tried again, the normal one, just hopefully fingers crossed, see if it worked, nothing. So we had to take samples of the cultures of the bacteria and send them off for culture and sensitivity testing, which gave us 2 options, one of which caused kidney disease, or well, at least kidney failure in koi. Obviously, we're not going to use that one. So we moved on to another medication that we special ordered just for this pond. Now, unfortunately, couldn't really get it into them any other way than doing injections. And we're injecting fish the size of a medium dog. And in order to inject them efficiently, either you knock them out or you get really, really good at giving injections to fish that are still awake, get in their little sock net. So from this pond, I got ridiculously good at giving injections to live fish. A couple different tricks. You can flip them upside down. Some koi, especially seems these big, dumb Japanese ones. A little bit of that tonic immobility that we see in sharks. Again, nothing's been published, just from my personal experience. And nowhere to inject, keep their face covered. We kind of give them a little hug against the side of their pond. This one was a nice big plastic one. Got everybody their injections. Everybody healed up just fine and got to move into their big pond. Yay. Well, until little princess started to not be eating as much. Tried her antibiotics again. Unfortunately, nothing was really helping her, and she just kind of went downhill. So me being kind of a newbie vet at the time, we wanted kind of more information. So packed up the fish, giant cooler, shipped her across the country to one of my wonderful colleagues, Dr. Shane Boylan, and his intern, Dr. Brian Vorbeck, who I actually did aquavet with way back in the day. They gave her a CT and found, unfortunately, what looked like an ovarian tumor in there. So unfortunately, yes, this is terrible for this poor little fish. She had just won grand champion at the big koi show in San Jose only about 8 months previously. So here she is with her large friend, Lovey, in their tank at that show. But unfortunately, she passed away about 8 months later. She was only 6 years old, even with this giant tumor. So unfortunately, yes, this is bad for her, but not contagious. Everybody else in the pond was okay, for the most part. Coming up into, let's see, I think it was 2021, Lovey started showing some weirdness here and there. So she had a little tiny bruise on her side, which happens from time to time. The scales are just a little bit localized raised. But looking at her closely, there's some tissue coming from one of her eyes, which is really weird. We don't see that often. So kind of retropulsing the eye, you kind of push down on it, which you can see here. There's a little bit of conjunctivitis, which again, in koi, any fish, super, super weird. So start her on some antibiotics and some eye drops, which don't work that well because obviously you put the fish back in the water just washes it away. So about a month later, now it's both eyes. And the bruising has switched sides. It's now a larger patch on the other side. The owner thought it was the same side, but we at least had pictures to prove that it had swapped sides. So, super weird. Put my ultrasound probe on it. Unfortunately, it doesn't penetrate super well. Like, you got this giant egg mass. Fish they have eggs, they have sperm, they're in there all the time. We'll talk about reproduction later. But anyway, you gotta use your ultrasound probe and see through this giant egg mass, which wasn't happening. So we called up our nearest specialty vet hospital and asked to use their CT machine. Yes, you can CT a fish. She is asleep for this entire procedure, trying to get a better idea of what's going on kind of deep within her tissues. And the owner was very accommodating to transport her only about 3 miles down the road. So thankfully they were very close. So went ahead, did the CT. We gave injection into her venous system. Yes, you can give fish IV drugs, provided that they're out, asleep. And we found this white blob. I'm not quite sure what that was. Suspect it might have been a kidney issue. We've seen weird kidney issues with other fish in this pond. One had a kidney growing next to its heart. She didn't survive. She didn't even wake up from anesthesia because, again, you have a kidney next to your heart can't pump. But anyway, so with this, we were debating doing surgery, doing some sort of imaging procedure to get up in there and see what was going on. And by the time we had all these options together, she was fine. The swelling had resolved. Her eyes were back to normal. I saw her a month and a half ago. She's fine. What all this was, I don't know. But during that time that she was having her issues, unfortunately little Whitey went off food and started losing a lot of weight. She went from 34 pounds down to 24 pounds, which is an insane amount of weight loss in only about 5 or 6 months. Come to find out, she also had an ovarian tumor in there. So she was a little bit older, about 12 years of age compared to Princess, but we see these ovarian tumors all the time. One of our episodes is just going to be on ovarian tumors, and we're going to show you some really gross pictures. But I'm happy to say I haven't seen this pond in a while. They've had other issues with fish running into walls and being stuck on the bottom. We had one that had fluid in its swim bladder and required me to use these ridiculously large needles in order to get some of that out. But this pond has just had a myriad of various health issues. And I'm knocking on wood that everything is good now, everything is settled. But unfortunately, when you're buying these super prized inbred fish, you get a lot of weird health issues. So I personally don't see that many super expensive Japanese koi for 2 obvious reasons, which we'll talk about that later. But if you are seeing this in your veterinary practice, or if you have some really expensive koi fish, very important that you get your fish screened regularly, either with ultrasound, provided yours is strong enough. We have a new one coming out this year that is completely waterproof that I can't wait to play with. But CT's also a good option to kind of get to the bottom of some of these interesting health issues. Very happy to share it. Lovey is fine. She's going to get her annual exam in a couple months, and we'll see how she's doing with all of her new friends. I think he's getting a couple more. So the saga will continue. Maybe we'll have an update for you next year. So that is the story of Princess, Lovey, and Whitey, and all of their friends living in their beautiful pond in Monterey. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.